I cried out. I said, God, if you're real, like if there's anything to spirituality, I need help. I need you right now. And I had this urge to open a Bible, which I was not ever familiar with, hadn't ever really read it. And I landed in the first page of Ecclesiastes in the Hebrew scriptures. And I read 12 chapters of my thoughts entirely, just written out, almost stuff that I could have written word for word. Meaningless, meaningless, everything is meaningless, like chasing the wind.
Welcome to The Deep Coach, the podcast where we explore the transformational journeys that shape us and that propel us to change the world. I'm your host, Jonathan Hermida, and in each episode we sit down with those who have journeyed into the depths of spiritual transformation and who are now reshaping the world through their presence and their work. In listening to these incredible human beings, you'll find insight, inspiration, and practical tools to support your journey as a coach and as a human being. My guest today is Patrick Boland. Patrick is an executive coach, leadership consultant, and the author of The Contemplative Leader. At age 16, Patrick experienced a profound existential crisis. Despite excelling in academics and sports, he found himself asking a deeper question. What is it all for? Nothing was fulfilling him, and he was no longer finding joy where he was told by others he would. This led him into a deep spiritual journey where he met incredible mentors, dissolved core ideas of who he thought he was and what he thought life was about, and finally began to define success in his own terms. Patrick is an incredibly wise soul, and this conversation is jam-packed with gems you'll be able to apply in your own life. I'm really excited for you to experience this conversation. Enjoy. Patrick, it is such a pleasure to be here connected with you. I like to start at the point where that transformational journey started and perhaps just slightly before it really got ignited. Who would you say Patrick was? What were you experiencing prior to the onset of your own transformational journey?
I was experiencing deep pain, a ton of pressure, external pressure that then manifested as internal pressure. So I was a teenager at the time, and I had been brought up in a way, particularly with my dad, where there was a huge amount of expectation on me to perform at everything and excel at everything. And in many ways, I had done pretty well according to that success playbook, but I was deeply unhappy within myself and deeply dissatisfied. And I'd gotten almost straight A's in my first state exams at the age of 14, and I thought, what was that about? I don't feel any better. I was doing my final grades in piano, hated it. There was no beauty to the music for me. I was playing in the top soccer team here in Ireland, playing in the Premier League for schoolboys, and we, scouts set our matches every week, and I just hated football. I got to the point where I wasn't enjoying any of it, and then I think the turning point for me was I thought surely relationships are going to be the thing. Surely relationships are going to be really, really important, and that's eternal. That's going to be really meaningful regardless. And I was really close to my nana, my grandmother, and she died around that time. And then I was going out with a girl and she cheated on me. So by the time all of this stuff happened, I was like, what is it all about? And I just took a big nosedive spiral down into, I need to find out what I'm doing. Because the life I had planned for myself isn't going the way I thought it was going to go. And I wasn't getting picked on the schoolboy representative team that I wanted to get picked on and that my coaches said I get picked on. So yeah, it was a huge crisis of everything. Yeah, physically, health-wise, collapsed. I was sleeping 16 hours a day. I was just deeply depressed. So that started my search for meaning. That took a solid 1 year of deep searching and philosophy and world religion and different practices. And I was reading Buddhism, practicing Tai Chi, reading world philosophers. And then I had a very strange experience.
That we're going to go into. So this was at 16 years when your nana dies, your girlfriend cheats on you, you don't make the club team, and then you spiral and you start asking deeper questions.
Yeah, pretty much.
Was there a particular book or resource that really stood out as a catalyst for you understanding either what was going on or supporting you on your journey at that moment in time?
there were a few things that led me deeper into the despair. I remember I used to listen to a lot of Simon and Garfunkel at the time, and I was writing a lot of poetry myself. Um, and then I remember listening to Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness by the Smashing Pumpkins,
Sure.
and that was exactly what it said on the lid. Uh, but then I suppose the deep experience for me was I cried out. I said, God, if you're real, like if there's anything to spirituality, I need help. I need you right now. And I had this urge to open a Bible, which I was not ever familiar with, hadn't ever really read it. And I landed on the first page of Ecclesiastes in the Hebrew scriptures. And I read 12 chapters of my thoughts entirely, just written out, almost stuff that I could have written word for word. Meaningless, everything is meaningless, like chasing the wind. So it was a
Oh, wow.
deep dive into existentialist philosophy, and yeah, a mixture of tears and laughter as I read through it, and just deeply resonated. So that was my entry point.
That was your entry point. And was that related to your spiritual experience?
Yeah, that was it. That was really it. I mean, this was a
Yeah.
night where I thought there's no point going on, because
Yeah.
if I just lived the life that is mapped out for me, I recently met with the head of a big global bank, and the chairman said, "Give me a call. Do this course in college. Give me a call when you finish. Come to London. Get on the trading floor. This is where you go." And I thought, do I want this? Do I want to have these holidays, these things? In my mind, I was looking around at friends of mine, and often partnerships and marriages didn't seem very meaningful. It was more like the trophy husband, the trophy wife. The kids just seemed like an accessory. So I was just looking at all of this, going, I don't want this for myself. And it was obviously through very black and white, concrete thinking as a teenager. So there was that element to it as well, and all the hormones of adolescence.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of a breakthrough there to kind of go, there's something else that I want to pursue.
Yeah.
There's something more. There's something more within me, and I want to find out what that is.
Yeah, there's something more. And I imagine also in reading those passages that the feeling of I'm not alone, that someone gets it, right?
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. I couldn't believe that this book was attributed to someone from 3,000 years ago and had done it all, had literally lived the life that I thought was going to be satisfying,
Yeah.
and went through everything and deconstructed everything and said, I was wealthy, was meaningless. I had all these sexual conquests, it was meaningless. I built all these great engineering works, and they're going to outlast me. What was the point? And just systematically goes through all of the typical upwardly mobile, um, egocentric grand designs of the first half of life. And at the end of the day, it was a very simple conclusion. It was like, essentially, appreciate the moment, live your life, honor God, be satisfied with what you have. It's enough. I was blown away. It's like, really? That's your conclusion? Tell me more. I want to experience this.
Tell me more. Let's find out. Let's
Mm,
find out.
yeah.
So where did that thread start taking you then?
I spent a year at home, still kind of moving through the depression. Honestly, I spent a year. I started reading the New Testament Gospels. I had been brought up Catholic here in Ireland, and I didn't really get it. I didn't really get like the church bit, the mass bit. But though internally within myself and my spirit, I felt a deep resonance around the deepest sense of spirituality and connection to the cosmos, to the stars at night, to nature, to love, to loving relationships, to kindness, to people. So from that level, I got it. But it started to open up to me. So I read a lot of the parables of Jesus. I was totally confused, but there was something about it that just resonated, and I just went with it. And then I started dabbling in prayer. I thought I was crazy. I started writing things out, and then slowly but surely, my perspective on life changed. I stopped being massively negative, pessimistic. I started to develop a compassion for myself. I started to develop more resilience over time. And that was about a year by myself, where this was a time when in school, and secondary school we call it, or high school, there were days when I wouldn't speak. I just wouldn't speak. I'd been so deeply depressed. And then a couple of teachers picked up on some stuff. I had a chaplain in my school, a wonderful Jesuit priest, who just really connected with me and answered my questions and was just a real support. He taught me the Enneagram at that point. So I was 17 when he taught me the Enneagram, and I was like, oh, okay. I was following the path of the 3 on the Enneagram, the achiever, thinking that if I was successful enough, that then I'd be worthwhile.
Mm.
So that was really helpful. That was the first psychometric I ever learned. That was really, really helpful. And then I really pursued mentors. So that was the path. I just sought out mentors for the next 5 years, and I had 5 of them, and they were wonderful people.
Yeah. How did your relationship to your dad and his desire for you to achieve that evolve during that time?
It was tough. I'm not sure if it evolved too much as a central relationship. I think my perception of it evolved, and my attitude towards it evolved. I kind of, I made all the appeals that a young man makes to his father to please see me, please understand me, please support me in this stuff. He was not happy when he saw me reading the Bible. So things like that was not cool for him at all. So it was, I suppose, I became more patient with him. I tried to understand where he was coming from, what life circumstances had shaped his views, his perspectives, his approach to being a father, and I probably tried to make many points of connection with him around. Yeah, let's see, can we understand each other a bit more? I wouldn't say much if any of that worked, but it shaped me, it changed me and my capacity to be a bit more patient, and then to just get space. I started doing therapy at 19 and started understanding boundaries, which I had not understood before. So as I read lots and lots, psychology, psychotherapy, applied spirituality, I started to slowly but surely understand things like family constellations and dynamics and taking responsibility for self and having compassion on self, and that all these spiritual things are not these externalized ideas in the world around us, but they really start within ourselves and in the relationships we have with others and the intimate relationships we have, and our capacity to be appropriately assertive and boundaried and to say no. So it was a deep dive and a lot of slow learning from me and trial and error. But yeah, not too much of it changed in the relationship, I'd say, apart from I became more understanding, more patient, and then I separated myself out over time.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me more about these mentors. What fields were they in, and what did you learn from them?
So they were actually all some form of spiritual teacher or pastor or something like that. They were. I'd had my heart broken, and I had been in an environment that was highly competitive in high school, so secondary school from like kind of 12 to 18, and I was just seeking out people who were just heart connected, who were patient, who were open, who were intellectually intelligent, who'd done their work spiritually, theologically, and also emotionally. So yeah, with different ones, some of them were really into theology, and we just read theology together and opposing theologians, and I debate and discuss and ask questions. And some of them, in the end, weren't very happy when I had different perspectives to them, but which to me was a big insight into the nature of mentorship, because my chaplain, Father Frank, from my secondary school, he didn't care where I went or what I thought. He was just there for me. He had no agenda for me to change. That was beautiful and amazing. Some of the others did, and that's fine. Like, no one's perfect. So yeah, there was a lot of that. Some of them were very emotionally aware, very psychologically aware. Some of them were good fun. Some of them I went and worked with kids, street kids with them, and overseas, and went to developing countries. Yeah, just people who I really respected, who I respected their attitude to life. I respected their decisions, their relationships, and the direction in which they were seeking to go.
Yeah. Yeah, you're a big proponent of mentors and mentorship. You write about it. You had a TEDx talk on it. What is it about mentorship that you find so valuable and important for somebody's journey?
Well, I didn't have it growing up, so I didn't know how to move from being a boy into an adolescent into being a man.
Yeah.
And I think that's the case for many young men. It's not confined to the male of the species. I think it applies to everybody. But I know from my own first-hand experience the confusion that comes up when you don't have some kind of a blueprint or an understanding or a pathway of knowing who am I and how do I have a healthy ego formation in the early years of life, and who do I allow to shape it? Because if we don't choose who to shape it, or if we're not fortunate enough to be in systems that naturally shape it in healthy ways, we'll so easily be brought into, for young men, the manosphere these days, or just, traditionally gang violence or anything, becoming violent, or it might not be physically violent, but emotionally violent or spiritually violent or whatever it is, relationally violent. So I think it's crucial that the way we mature, that we understand where is the line, what's appropriate, what's helpful, where are the boundaries that are going to give us more freedom. I always say to clients, boundaries give us loads of freedom. We don't have boundaries, we don't know where to go, we don't know what to do. We try here, we try there, we kick against the goads, we do all this kind of stuff. Having a wise mentor, having an actual mentor, not someone who's trying to shape you into their agenda or manipulate you, but someone who's there for you and who understands how to listen and how to be present and how to meet you where you're at, but then when required can answer direct questions, give direct answers, share from their experience without trying to superimpose it onto you. That's beautiful. It's so powerful.
It is so powerful. Yeah, it supercharges. It has the potential to supercharge somebody's journey, where somebody doesn't have to go through the pitfalls. They can learn from somebody else's experiences. And not everybody, people listening might be like, who's a mentor? Who can I access? And I found for my own life, I've had direct mentorship from an actual person that I speak with. But also I've sought mentorship through the books and certain teachings that allow me to learn through other people's experiences. You can learn. I also, as just my own disposition, I
Mm-hmm.
learned what not to do from observing those around me, which sounds a little bit like what was going on with you. Like, hey, these weren't good examples for me. This is how not to be a man. This is how not to show up. And so mentorship can show up in many different ways. Obviously, having a human being that's been through it and can talk you through and hold space, like you said, be present with you, is a huge gift. And if someone doesn't feel they have access to somebody, there's other ways to find mentorship of sorts, support, guidance,
Absolutely.
wisdom.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just like you, I'd say um, lots of books that I've read, lots of authors that I've read, they've been surrogate mentors for me.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. Ideally, if they're alive and you get access to them, it's amazing. Just the change that happens through osmosis from just being around them, being experiencing their energy, experiencing their presence. But it's not required. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. At what point you had ambitions to be a pilot? What happened?
Yeah, I always wanted to fly. Yeah. When I grew up here in Ireland, my uncle was the head of the aerobatic display team in our very tiny air corps. And I used to go to all these air shows growing up and sitting in jets and things from the age of 5. I thought this is the coolest thing ever. So I worked in the airport quite illegally at the age of 14. I marshaled my first aircraft. So that was like literally bring it in with the little sticks.
Yeah.
I just lived and breathed aviation, just really wanted to fly. I couldn't join the military because I have asthma and I missed a lot of school with my asthma. So I was disappointed with that. Um, and then I went, look, I can go into rescue helicopters if I go and train as a commercial pilot first and do a transfer course. So I'd worked for a few years. I'd done everything my dad asked me to do, and I'd done the degree, and I'd worked in a bank, and I'd worked in consulting, and I did all these things. And then eventually I was like, I'm just going to finally have the courage to pursue what I want. And I went to train as a pilot. I got into a top flight school in Spain. I was delighted. I got my bank loan secured. I was all ready to go. I had an interview with an airline before I started my course. And they said, just send us your class 1 aeromedical results. And I was really worried about my asthma. and the lung capacity test. And I remember going in on the day, and I failed the first time they put the mask over me. I didn't hit I think it was the 70th percentile I had to hit for chest air capacity. And the doctor gave me another chance, and I went, and I just about crossed the line, 70th percentile. And I was like, amazing, I'm in. And then checked my eyesight on the letters. Everything was great, better than 20/20 vision, and I was so relaxed. And then they gave me this booklet with a lot of circles and colored circles, and they said, in the circles you'll see a number. What number do you see? And by the time I got to page 2, I was like, what number is it? I can't see a number. And then the lady made me go through every single page of the Ishihara color blindness test, and at the end said, you're colorblind and you're never going to fly commercially.
Wow.
And like my heart just sank, and like I was down for 3 years. I was like, finally I had the courage to pursue my thing. And here we go.
How did you process that?
I was angry. Firstly, I played the victim. I found out everything about color blindness, the kind I had. And I was like, my granddad never told my mum that he was colorblind. It's so not fair. So I did that. Then I started to blame my dad. I did all the victim stuff. I was sick. I missed the test in school. I was in hospital with asthma. It's so not fair. And then after a while, just deep sadness, like really deep sadness and disappointment and heartbreak. I transferred all that energy for flying into sailing. I didn't sail growing up, but I had one experience with my friend and his dad on their boat, and I thought sailing seems magical, just too slow in comparison to flying. But then, I kind of went all in for sailing, and I went from zero to hero, and firstly got my international sailing license and rented some boats with some friends in the Mediterranean, and that was really scary and fun and amazing. And then I'd had a sense when I was 19 that 3 things were going to be important to me in life: writing, sailing, and speaking Italian. So I did Italian in college. I was always writing in the background, stories, poems, essays. And then 26, I went for the sailing. And then I just kept on going, qualified as a professional sailor, kept on going, became a yacht instructor. And not really to work at it, but more just so I could be confident, because the waters around Ireland can be pretty choppy and pretty challenging. So I had a lot of fun, continue to have a lot of fun with sailing.
Mm. And internally at this point, you're in your late 20s. How are you? What's your relationship with yourself at this point?
The work that had started around the age of 15 and 16, that was like round 1 of the internal work.
Yeah.
I'd say 19, a lot of stuff hit me again when I was in college, and I had been made president of one of the student organizations, and then just conflict and all the stuff that happens when you're involved in organizations that just hit me. So that was round 2, therapy, part of that. Disappointment in work and love life and careers and the whole lot. So I think by the time I was in my late 20s, I was like, I'm just going to stop trying to pursue stuff so hard. I'm going to just become a little bit more open and try to let go of all these tightly held ideas I have about life and how I'm going to contribute and what I'm going to do and how important it all is.
Yeah.
I went to one of my friends. He was training as a spiritual director, is the term. So I went to him for a few sessions, and we just focused tons on letting go. How do you let go? And then at this point, I started reading Richard Rohr's books. So Richard Rohr over there in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I didn't want to read any of these books. I thought I was kind of done with reading about Christian spirituality, but my friend gave it to me, and I remember 20 pages in, I was like, this is actually good. This is really helpful. This book is called Everything Belongs. And so I started really getting into the contemplative traditions, the mystical traditions, and just noticing all the parts of me that were trying to hold on, that were trying to force things. And I learned about the distinction between what's called the cataphatic and the apophatic approaches within Christian mysticism. So one is the Cataphatic, I want to build up, get loads of stuff, do loads of things in some way to try and touch the eternal, get to God, get to heaven, whatever it is. And I was still on that path. That's the classic Enneagram 3 path of success, more, achieve, goals, go. And then there's the apophatic path of like, let go of all that stuff. What you're looking for is within. Try to let go. Use different practices, meditation, contemplative sits, journaling exercises, everything, anything. And strip away all the layers that are getting in your way and in the way of your relationships and in your work and every part of your life. Go inside, become present to what's already there, and trust that. And for those of faith, that's where God is. It's not out there pie in the sky. So that's where I was, I'd say, by 28, 29. So that was a profound change.
Profound change. I know I'm going to jump timelines here, and we'll go back to a bit of the timeline, but you ended up writing a book with Richard Rohr.
I did. Yeah.
How did you first connect with Richard?
It's pretty crazy. I was reading his work for a number of years. I was getting married. My wife was at her bachelorette party, and they asked the question, who would Patrick most like to have dinner with who's alive? She's like, oh, it's easy, Richard Rohr. And about a month later, I had a very vivid dream that I was working with Richard, that I was writing a book with him. I remember waking up going, that was pretty weird, very vivid. Opened my emails, was reading the daily meditations that his organization have. And one of them said, we're hiring head of people organization development. I thought, I'm going to take this as a sign, put in a resume. I didn't have one for the last 10 years. And then 5 months later, I was over for a week trying to work out, would my wife and I move to New Mexico to work with Richard. And so first thing I did was I met him as part of the process, and we just got on really well. And later that night, he's like, do you want to go out for dinner and just chat? And we just stayed in touch. He just kept on emailing and being in touch, and we just got on extremely well. And it was such a gift for me to just, firstly, I didn't want to meet him because you don't want to meet your heroes in case they ruin it. Yeah. And it was way better than I could have predicted. So that was an incredible gift. But also it was just so fun. Like, we'd go on road trips over the years. And, we'd be talking about 5 or 6 different topics across 1 hour, knowing that they're all going to meld into each other in some way. Yeah. That they're all interconnected. And so for me, just having someone else who thinks like that, but like on a whole other level, is just so much fun and so profound. So in the end, it made sense for me to be a consultant for the organization, the Center for Action and Contemplation. So they started asking me would I do some work on some of Richard's books and do some creating some resources, because I'd done a lot of work on processes, group processes, team development, all that kind of stuff. And I've been leading small groups, men's groups and other small groups for 20 years. So it was an opportunity to bring a lot of these practices and spiritual practices and soul reflections, put it all together. So that's where it started out. And then in the end, they asked would I write a book with him. He had a bestseller called The Universal Christ. And then the feedback was some of his readers struggled with to access some of the content. So I wrote a book of 40 different reflections using his work with Richard's imprimatur, helping people to experientially and then in an embodied way access the content, reflecting on some of my own life experiences or reflecting on famous people in the world, different stories of different people with a different exercise at the end of each very short 800-word piece. So that was amazing, and I dreamt about it years before, but that wasn't the best bit. The best bit was getting to know Richard. That still is the best bit,
and having him as a mentor, I imagine. Yeah,
it's incredible. It's a gift.
So your life pivoted. You started to pivot towards a place of service, and what's interesting is and kind of and really trying to live from a deeper place. What's interesting is that 3 in your Enneagram never really left from what I'm seeing, because you ended up getting a ton of diplomas, credentials there. Your background is quite extensive in that regard. Can you share a little bit about that motivation and some of those degrees and certifications that you ended up accumulating over that period of time?
Yeah. Most of them, Jonathan, came from a place of fear.
Okay.
it was, well, what if this thing doesn't work out? I want to have a backup. So there was a little bit of that. When I finished my pursuit of flying, I got a call from my high school saying would I come back and teach. And it literally happened a day after I found out I was colorblind. I was like, okay, just go with it. So as part of that, while I was teaching, I had to go and get my qualifications. Went back to Trinity College, did that, and then I did a master's off the back of that in guidance and counseling, which was my first foray into professional qualification for coaching or therapy or counseling. And yeah, I didn't really enjoy it, but some of it was okay. But I just saw it as it was the thing I needed in order to practice. And then I just kept on going with those things. I went back and did theology, which was great because I'd always wanted to do it in college. My dad said, no way. So that was very redeeming. And it was really redeeming because I just kind of wrote pretty much the stuff that I thought, the stuff that I believed that made sense to me, that resonated for me. And that went really well, very enjoyable. Then I trained as an executive coach as well. And that was brilliant. It was just such an experiential course. It was constant triad work. It was constant trial and error, very pragmatic, very real, way better than the formal academic master's qualification that I had. And then, I just kept on getting offered this course to train as a psychotherapist as well. And the third time it came my way, I was like, maybe I should pay attention to this. So I started doing that just to become a better coach or to have more resources or greater depth around my coaching. And then I realized after about 6 years, you have to keep on practicing to keep this up. So I do 3 hours on a Friday near to where I live. And that's been a gift as well. There's an overlap, but it's quite a distinctive and different approach than traditional executive and leadership coaching. So it's been moving in the direction of things that I do care about. Now that I've answered the question, it may have started out with some fear at the beginning, but it's certainly become very life-giving to me and to others, and follows the right path, the right trajectory. Looking back now, at the time it was often confusing, especially to others.
Yeah, not only life-giving, but it sounds like you were following the breadcrumbs. It doesn't sound in the way that you're sharing it that you were seeking it out, trying to, what else can I do? It was really, this is in front of me. I've seen it 3 times. Maybe I should listen.
Absolutely. Do you know, there's a quote from the poet David Whyte, specifically on this that I have in my book. Could I read you the short quote?
Please do. Yeah, please.
He says, "Our life's work is not a series of stepping stones onto which we calmly place our feet, but more like an ocean crossing where there is no path, only a heading, a direction, in conversation with the elements. Looking back, we see the wake we have left as only a brief glimmering trace on the waters."
I got chills. Yeah, that's it. And I think that's the biggest fear that people have. Or folks, there are those of us, and many that are listening to this conversation, that are called to embark on a journey, on a path that is the pathless path. It is a path that nobody else has embarked because it is unique to each life that is in front of them. But that is a risk, because what's easy? Following somebody else's trajectory. Oh, this worked. Get this degree, do this. Like you mentioned before, kind of follow the line. And that's why people do it, because there's some sort of feeling of security and safety in that.
Yeah.
But for those of us that are really called to do this deeper work and be of service, it really feels like a pathless path. And it comes a time where we have to begin trusting and listening more deeply, not just to our own inner self, but also to what life is calling forth within us. And that could be quite disorienting, disconcerting, right? It's like navigating the open ocean, right? But can you trust that life is supporting the way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's difficult, I think, particularly the first time around, the first step into the unknown. It can feel, depending on the schema or the script, that the narrative that we've inherited, it can feel like sometimes even like death, like psychological death, to step out and not have the known. But I think, like all of these deep spiritual principles, we need to take the step first, and then things become clear. That's certainly been my experience.
Yeah.
Got to just step into the unknown. It still is today. There's things I'm stepping into now that I'm worried about, scared about.
Yeah.
But I know from experience it's going to happen. It's going to work well. In the end, it'll just be different to what I first thought.
Yeah.
There'll be pain for me. There'll be learning in it. And I really don't know fundamentally which way it's going to play out.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
not the point.
It is. It's not the point. You know, thinking about folks in my life, I just had a conversation with somebody who came over, a friend of mine, who was working at an accelerator and thought that this was
Mm-hmm.
her career when a company within the accelerator recruited her to
Mm-hmm.
join their organization, a fast startup, like a fast growing startup, and she made the leap. And she's like, okay, life is calling me forth in this direction. And you know, I
Mm-hmm.
just got my visa from France. This is an Italian based company. Maybe my life is orienting towards Europe. Great. The
Mm-hmm.
breadcrumbs are going in this direction. Six
Yeah.
weeks in, she gets fired. It wasn't the right fit. It was actually got toxic quite quickly. It got toxic quite quickly. And so
Wow.
she recognized that it wasn't for her. And all the signs that she thought were pointing her in a direction blew up. And now she's
Mm-hmm.
finding herself flailing a little bit. But
Mm.
when I was really digging and asking her questions, she's saying, yeah, but there's a deeper voice that's saying, yeah, you have to wait right now. There's something happening. But that's because of the flailing and because of the way that our
Mm.
mind is constructed to notice when the amygdala gets activated because it's trying to keep us
Mm.
safe. If
Mm-hmm.
we can settle beneath that and really listen, there is
Mm-hmm.
I've found, and I've noticed in my clients and others, friends, that there is a deeper voice that knows and that is at least telling you, giving you guidance, either go forward or stay put. You know,
Yes.
very, very kind of general, but clear direction. You know,
Definitely.
and if we can really listen to that and hold steady, life shows up eventually.
It's so true. No, you said it perfectly there. I think a lot of the time it's a function of how much of a grip we have on the ideas of how my life should be.
That's right.
And often it's an unconsciously held narrative or schema. Like, this is it, this is it. And I find that different cultures have a different relationship to that as well. That certain cultures, you really want things to be planned out and very clear. Other cultures, not as much. And it really depends on the stories we read, on the myth that we feel that we're a part of. Is this something that needs to be incremental, logical, clear, almost mechanistic? Step by step by step, you go, you grow. As you know, certain personalities are more drawn to that and need that to assuage inner fear. And for them, that can be like one of the biggest invitations and one of the biggest challenges. And then there's others, like I love going back into, say, our own Irish stories and culture that, go back at least 1,000 years ago, if not way before. And the narrative, it's always cyclical. It's always all over the place. It's crazy. Everything is unpredictable, but everything is a moment, an opportunity for magic, for certain things to happen at an intersection of time, intersection of place, intersection of relationship.
Mm.
I remember studying it in ancient Irish when we were in school, thinking this is a crazy story. And now I'm like, oh, there's so much depth and magic to this. It's a whole other schema of how to approach reality.
Yes. Yes. And it's true. And we're living in different levels of awareness and relationship to reality. You know, I really
Mm-hmm.
like the simple framework of life happening to me, life happening by me, life happening through me, and then as me, those sort of stages, because it really
Beautiful.
speaks to those levels of consciousness where most of the world
Mm-hmm.
right now is living by life happening to me. I'm a
Yeah.
victim to my
Yeah.
circumstances and I can't change my
Mm-hmm.
circumstances. But
Yeah.
then somebody graduating from life happening to me to life happening by me, that level of empowerment,
Mm-hmm.
I got this, go get them, that American mentality, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's where you're saying I'm driving things forward. I see a goal, I go towards a goal. That's really life-giving for that stage of awareness.
Yes.
But that also has edges and that also has dead ends.
And a
You know,
huge shadow. A huge shadow.
a
Like,
huge shadow.
to me,
Huge shadow.
that's the first half of life drive, and it's appropriate and important and good. Like,
Yeah,
that's part of the process of being mentored into adulthood and taking responsibility and having agency and moving beyond victim and all that kind of stuff.
totally.
But if we stay there forever, like Jonathan, sometimes I'm working with people, senior leaders, executives who are in their 50s and 60s, and they're still going at that pace in that way. and there's very little maturation has taken place, or reflection, or depth, or change. They haven't gone through the liminal options that have come their way. They've just pushed through and driven,
Right.
and then they're often wondering, why is my health failing, or why are the other people on the senior team not listening to me as much, or why are people not working as hard as we used to work? I want to just keep on pushing and driving. We can't keep that up across the lifespan and integrate and individuate and collaborate effectively. We need people, I think, to acknowledge the life phase that they're in and to embrace it, because that's where we get mentor energy, generative energy.
To support, and I said to support those transitions, especially because you mentioned the liminal space, and that is really where people feel. It's speaking of flailing and speaking of just being disoriented. The place between the no longer, that which no longer is here, and the not yet, nothing, that new thing hasn't come where my friend is at. The no longer, that job that was secure, that I thought was going to be there, is not there, but the new thing is not there either. Neither is the clarity on the path forward. So how do I live in that space? How do I live in that space?
Yeah. And I think in the Western world, with the dominant cultural narratives we have, it's particularly difficult.
Yes.
I know when I go to parts of Asia, I've been amazed at just the greater capacity, not across the board, but the greater capacity to be in well, I don't know, let's see what happens. I'm like, wow, what an incredible way to be brought up, for those who've been brought up that way, an incredible way to deal with life.
Yeah. And what's interesting is I think you speak a lot about the VUCA world, volatile, uncertain. Remind me of the C and the A.
Yeah, complex, chaotic, and ambiguous.
Yeah, and ambiguous, right? And so we're entering into an unknowable future, I feel, with the advent of AI and everything that's happening in the world. It's really unknowable. We can't predict what's happening next. You wrote a book called The Contemplative Leader that I think this is a good moment to speak a little bit to it. Can you give some context on The Contemplative Leader? What's the essence of that book and the teaching there, and what you're inviting leaders to step into?
Yeah, I'd love to. The main theme is looking at how to lead from a place of contemplation. And I oversimplify it on purpose and say, let's just say contemplation is a stance of non-attachment, where I'm present to myself and present to situations and to what is. And I'm connected to the people around me and to the business, the organization, the political environment, whatever it is where I'm leading and influencing. How can I be here without forcing things, without forcing control and forcing an agenda that isn't really going to work, isn't really appropriate? And how can I, when things go wrong, when things don't go my way, how can I not just swing the pendulum the whole of the way and become detached and disengaged completely? How can I remain in the unknown when it's unknown, and also in the known, and execute excellently? So it's this non-dualistic consciousness of how can I focus on the process as well as the outcome. Focus on the relationship with people as well as the numbers. Focus on the contribution to those who we serve and to our society, as well as the inner realities of running a business or running any organization. So not to limit and narrow down our vision and our focus, but to have a more expansive way of engaging. And then how can I lead and influence other people without needing them to conform to my way of being and my way of doing things? How can I meet them where they're at, draw the best from them? And how can we understand the dominant culture, the dominant consciousness of the organization or of the team, of the department? And how can we have ways of practically and simply build the relationships, build the dynamic, take steps to move forward? But I start off, the first 2/3 of the book are the inner journey of contemplative leadership. So moving from the conscious to the pre-conscious to the subconscious, all the work around that.
Yeah. And that's about right? In terms of 2/3, meaning I think for anybody's journey of leadership, 2/3 of it is the inner journey, is the work that we're doing ourselves. And then that final 1/3 is, okay, how do I now impact, support, take it out into the world?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do most leaders get stuck? So somebody who's maybe, living very much in the consciousness of life happening by me and driving something forward, driving their team forward, driving the vision forward. obviously if they're going to work with you at this level, there has to be a crack, an opening of a desire to
Mm.
live a different way. So what is the journey for them then to go from doing it in that way to kind of slowing down and coming deeper into themselves?
Love the question. Yeah. What's the crack that lets the light get in? It's been different. For those leaders who've read the book and then come to work with me, it's been quite interesting because it's been slightly different to those who I would have traditionally worked with before that. Um, Usually, they've done quite a lot. They're able to execute. They're competent. They got capabilities. They've some degree of self-knowledge, self-awareness. They've some degree of inner development done, and they want to do more. But they've got this niggling feeling that, is this the best thing that I can be doing with my life? Or in the business, do we just take on another business school's program or the latest book that's been, come through Harvard Business Review? Not to say they're bad books, but the latest fad, the latest thing. There's usually something that has made them go, I really need to get to the bottom of this. So I've had young CEOs in their 30s who, there's been a massive relational breakdown with the COO, who was a childhood friend. So that was one, and that was the crack in the entry point. Um, I've had very seasoned CEOs, kind of in their 60s, looking at the next few generations of legacy and how to hand over and how to adapt the strategy of the business into the future, knowing that tech and media and everything is just changing so much. And so that was the entry point. And then as we got into the work, they realized it's actually about their own inner work, and it's actually about the development of their senior team, because they're just stuck in business as usual. We know how to execute. We know how to do what we've always done. But do we have the capacity to be agile, to be flexible, to adapt, to sit back, to assess, to have space, to have silence, to listen to ourselves, to listen to each other, to see what's emerging in the system, what's emerging in the macro system around us. Um, yeah, it's really, there's quite a variety. Even had classic C-suite people from traditional banks and things like that who are just interested, kind of going, how do you bring in contemplative ways of being in a senior team that are pushing hard and bringing about huge change within a system? How do we, the big question I have with one client now is, how do we influence the CEO and how do we influence the regulators so that we can do what we need to do, but also let them understand there's a whole other way of adapting to risk profiles.
Mm.
And there's a whole other narrative. It's not just, we're not just here to keep the border in check. We're here to show possibilities and opportunities moving into the future. So it can be quite exciting, but fundamentally it comes back to going, how do we go inside? How do we understand the impact of our leadership? How do we understand our dynamic amongst ourselves? How do we get out of silos? How do we collaborate in real ways? How can we be honest? How can we be vulnerable? How can we say we make mistakes? There's a lot of stuff on embodied leadership that I do. And then, how do we create the conditions for team and development and team learning in a psychologically safe way? But it all starts with our own learning. And then what does it look like as it moves out in wider concentric circles across the system?
Yeah. How do you navigate? So it's a little bit different from having a culture that's already established within this framework of contemplative leadership and contemplative thought, because as you're hiring, you're bringing people that are in alignment with it. But if you were to go into a team and shake things up and sort of invite people to reflect, go deeper, do the inner work, the big risk is that they're going to discover this is not for me. I don't want to be doing this. I want to be doing something else. This is not my work to be done here. So I don't know if you've had situations like that arise. And if you have, if you can share examples, and how do you navigate, how do you help leadership navigate that when people are falling off because they're realizing this is not where they need to be?
I think the same applies to all coaching at one level. If we take the time to connect with ourselves and what's deeply happening within us and what we really desire and how we can contribute, it's inevitable that there's going to be, quite a percentage of people will go, I don't want to be here. I was almost in a trance for a while. What else is there? So for me, that's just a thing. That's just a phenomenon that happens anyway. In terms of engaging in contemplative leadership specifically, it works really well when individuals do it as part of a systemic approach where they can keep conversations open amongst themselves and where there's a high degree of commitment. Ideally, some degree of flexibility, that we can actually change our ways of working, change our ways of interacting. But if that's not present at the start, that can emerge in time. But I think it's all about doing it together. If we go on a journey in isolation, I think we run the highest risk of, as we grow, we realize that people aren't growing around us. But as we do it in small groups and small teams and then wider teams, then it gets pretty exciting. And it's not that we want everyone to go, I'm going to be really non-attached, I'm going to be doing things in a particular way. What I write about in the book and the approach, it's not a formulaic approach. It's not that you have to do it this way. Some, different people attune to it at a different level. For some, it's just, oh, okay, I don't need to be in control as much as before. Fine. That's it. For others, they go right to the very last chapter, which is looking at understandings of consciousness according to the original understanding of spiral dynamics, the way it's kind of taught more in Europe these days, of like, let's just notice the culture, notice the dynamics, notice where things naturally sit. Is my approach to leadership and is our approach to leadership, is it working within the system or not? Can I flex? Is the system ready to change? If yes, let's go through some change stuff. If no, then can I change or not? How do I essentially get over myself and my own egoic desires to be in charge and in control, and how do I meet people where they're at? And that's a lot of the work. It's going, how do I facilitate and serve and connect with in ways that are most appropriate? And that can be really, really exciting if people are up for it. Sometimes people are very burnt out, though, as you probably know yourself, and they come to coaching almost as a last ditch to go, how can I fix it and change it?
Right.
And that's unfortunate, because we might come to coaching a little bit too late. I think ideally we come when things are feeling pretty good. Yeah. Because then we can really explore without having to be in our sympathetic nervous system state of survival.
That's right. That's from a place of groundedness and explore freely. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
How has fatherhood changed you?
It's given me way less sleep. It's my almost 2-year-old son 2 weeks ago, he was in my arms and he just came right up to my eyes and he pointed and goes, lions. Lions.
Just calling you out.
Dad, yeah, then he goes, Daddy, old man. These are some of his full sentences. I was like, great.
Yeah, perfect.
Welcome the feedback.
And you're like, I wonder why.
Yeah.
I got him.
I'm going to tell you about this when you grow up. Stop waking up 8 times a night.
Yeah.
How has it changed me? I was really scared of being a father. I didn't want to be a father for probably obvious reasons. For years and years, I'd meet up with Richard Rohr, and I'd say once a year, he'd like tap me on the knee and go, "You're going to be a great father someday." And I'd just like well up or choke up and go, "No, I could never do that." And so over the years, I started to believe that it could be possible, and maybe I won't cause the most harm I could possibly think of. So by the time I became a father, I was 38, I think. Yeah, 38 when I became a father. I was actually ready. I'm so glad it didn't happen before that. And honestly, it's felt very peaceful. It's felt like, people overuse the word privilege, but like just amazing, like an amazing privilege. It's been hard. Neither of our boys sleep. My eldest is nearly 6, and sometimes he sleeps now, but he didn't for the first 3 years, and the youngest nearly 2. We have another one coming in July. So sleep, social life, all that stuff. I think it's changed me, like physically. I don't have as much
more
energy to go to the gym, So, I've moved from lifting weights to a lot more swimming. That's been one piece.
Sure.
Um, but in ways, it's felt very integrating for me. It's
Mm.
felt calm, felt peaceful. It's been hard in the family dynamic, just a lot of illness and all that kind of stuff. But overall, it's felt, yeah, it's felt very at home, and I've been surprised by that in ways. And I feel a lot more contentment, if I'm honest, a lot more contentment. Um, it's also made me kind of slow down a little bit in work. Like 2019, I was on 60 flights. I'd be in one part of the US one day and in Istanbul 2 days later. So that wildness has stopped, um, which is good. Good for everyone, including the environment.
Yeah, totally, totally. How has it changed your relationship, not just with your dad, whether I don't know if he's alive or not, but you're reflecting on your childhood and how he fathered you and how you're now fathering your boys. Has that come up for you in terms of reflecting on your father in that way?
Yeah, it certainly has. I think the stuff with my dad kind of came to a place of peace for me long before I became a dad. Um, we had a conversation one time. I won't go into the details of it, but essentially, by the time we finished, I just kind of went, "Oh, okay,
Mm.
you've got a completely different take. Even eyes wide open, you got a totally different philosophy and approach to life. That's okay. You're entitled to have that. That's your prerogative. I've got a different one. There's the big difference. Um, so it hasn't really affected that. My dad died last year,
Mm.
and he was 92, so he had had a great innings.
Mm.
Um, and I was glad that he had met my two sons. Um, my wife decided to call our son Patrick as well, so he's now the ninth generation
Wow.
Patrick.
Wow.
So we got over 200 years of that going here in Dublin.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it is kind of wild.
Do you have the
Um,
number at the end of it at this point? Like Patrick
oh no,
Boland ninth or something?
I think my dad would like that. No, it's culturally we don't really do that here, but maybe if we visit the US, we do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't think it's changed it too much. I mean, I can still understand. I think I can understand where he's coming from. Um, he certainly, before he died, he commented a lot on appreciating the way I was with my boys, and that was really nice and really encouraging, but also not something that I needed. So it was a very non-attached way of kind of going, "Thank you, that's lovely. I'm really glad that you see it." Um, but I wasn't craving that at the same time. So it's felt quite peaceful.
And beautiful, beautiful. How do you relate? So like I mentioned, we're entering into an unknowable future, the VUCA world.
Mm.
How do you relate to that yourself as a father of young kids, that we're entering into this AI inevitability
Mm.
where AI is going to be
Yeah,
infused in all things? Um, Possibilities, opportunities are going to look different for them than they looked for us.
yeah,
Your own work is going to evolve as a result. How are you relating to everything that's unfolding right now in the world?
yeah. In different ways. On one level, I kind of go from Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. So huge change has always come about. Civilizations rise and fall. I was reading my eldest son the poem Ozymandias there last week. He asked, "What is a poem?" And I took out an Irish poem by Yeats and then this one, Ozymandias. And I explained to him about, this statue on the sand saying, look, everyone who gazes on the statue and, basically be terrified. Just look at what I have, and there's only sand left. There's nothing left of the civilization.
Mm.
So on one level, I think about that. But then on another level, around AI specifically, I was on the Human Exchange website yesterday, humanexchange.com, and they have a movie coming out about AI, a documentary
Right.
that's actually out now. And one of the founders was just talking about interviewing all the CEOs of all the AI companies, interviewing all the engineers, or not all, like a sizable amount of them. 10% of them are saying that they're worried that their children won't make it to high school, that there's a real existentialist threat to the human race. So when I hear that kind of stuff, and the more I've looked into the research, the more I'm like, we need to really get those guardrails on really, really quickly. And there's a whole rabbit hole of the research and the conversations around that and what's required by lawmakers and everything. It's basically people to give feedback and for an outcry to be there to say we need it now. So there's a part of me that goes like, this is extremely serious, the most serious possibly on an existential level that it has been. And then at the same time, in the middle of that, I kind of go, I'm going to do what's mine to do. I'm going to continue to try to do my work and see how that plays out as I father. I will make mistakes and hopefully I'll learn. I will continue to evolve and change in my business, in the model and the ways of working and supporting different people and organizations I support. That's probably as much as I have for now. It's continuing to do it and to support that in my kids and in my community and bring influence where I can. So that might be a very simplistic answer, overly simplistic. But that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the only sane way to approach it. We can't overly optimize for something we have no idea where it's going to head or what the result is. So the only sane thing to do is, slow down, stay present, listen deeply to yourself, to your children, to what's emerging in the world, and do what's yours. Like you said, do what's yours, do what's in front of you, and it's going to change every step that you take. But here we are. What else are we doing?
No, absolutely true. And you reminded me of a quote when I wrote the Contemplative Leader. I've got different leaders that I interview in different chapters at the start to hear their story. And one of them is one of my mentors, Meg Wheatley, who's a phenomenal coach and consultant. And she ended her interview with me by talking about one of her teachers, Sadhguru. Let me see if I can remember the exact quote. If you do not do what is yours to do, it's a disaster, a wasted space. But if you do what is yours to do, that's all that can be asked.
Yes. That is beautiful. That is beautiful. As we wrap up this conversation that has been just so rich in so many ways, for somebody that's listening, that's on their own transformational journey and kind of going through it, what's the best piece of advice or resource or what can you share with them that can perhaps help them on their journey?
To paraphrase Stoic philosophers from a bedtime story I read to my boys a few nights ago, called "We're Going on a Bear Hunt." Do you have that in the US?
I know it well, yeah.
Here's the context. We were on vacation last week in an island in the south of Ireland, which is a Gaeltacht, so they all speak Irish there. We went over for the day, true Irish form. It was raining, it was horrible. We went on a hike, we got lost. We ended up in a marsh in a wood. I was carrying a stroller on one shoulder, my nearly 2-year-old in an arm. It was wild. And then, and I said, my almost 6-year-old was leading the charge, following science. And we just kept on coming back to the line from "We're going on a bear hunt." It's a beautiful day. We're not scared. We can't go over it. We can't go under it. We have to go through it.
That's right.
And that was our mantra in the lashing rain with the wind, a storm coming in as we were getting soaked. And I think that is a beautiful line to think about where we're at right now, today, no matter what we're going through, if it's grief, if it's uncertainty, if it's heartbreak, if it's ill health, if it's a lack of financial security, just a lack of knowing, if it's deep anxiety. Embrace it, be present to it, be curious about it. Ask open-ended questions. What is this? What is it telling me? How can I be here in it rather than avoid it? How can I be connected to whatever it is? And how can I give it the space or ask for help to give it the space to see what emerges from it? Because that's where everything begins and ends.
Absolutely perfect. Yeah, when we're facing the storm, can't go over it, can't go under it. You got to go through it. Got to go through it. Patrick, we met serendipitously, and it's a gift to know you. And I feel richer after this conversation with you. Thank you for everything that you have done in your own life. Thank you for your commitment to this journey, because the ripples coming from you and through you are impacting many lives. So I appreciate you, appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. It's been great to talk with you. I've really got a lot of energy from it, and keep on going with this wonderful podcast and all your work.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for being with us today. To learn more about today's guest, visit our podcast landing page at www.podcast.centerfortransformationalcoaching.com. You'll find links to their website, social media, and anything else they might want to share there. And if you're curious to explore more about our work, our trainings, or the deep coaching approach, you'll find everything at www.centerfortransformationalcoaching.com. A new episode of this podcast releases every 2 weeks, so please subscribe wherever you listen to stay up to date on each episode. Until next time, stay present, embrace love, and continue sensing into what life is calling you toward. See you soon.